Hello, fifth graders. It's Mr. Headington. I am here with your week 8, I think it's week 8, health lesson. And we are still talking about alcohol and tobacco and other drugs. First couple weeks ago, we talked about medicines and safety with taking medications, and just thinking about the fact that some drugs that are meant to be helpful for your body are things that your parents should be helping you with to get the right amount, make sure you're taking the right things, and so on. And along with your parents, the doctors and sometimes nurses helping out with people's health can recommend what you should take when it comes to medication. Last week we talked about tobacco and how tobacco is really not a great choice for use for anybody, and it relates to smoking, whether it be cigarettes or cigars or a pipe, or chewing tobacco, or kind of the more recent development with vaping, which is not tobacco that is happening, but it does have the nicotine in it that's harmful to the body. So hopefully you make, or with the information that I gave you, you make better decisions later in life about those things. This week, when we talk about alcohol, alcohol is something that I really, really want you to think hard about when it comes to making good choices in your life. And to me, I think most of you at some point in your future are going to have to make a decision about whether you're using alcohol or not, or how you're using the alcohol. So as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old kid in 5th grade, we'll be talking a little bit about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate when it comes to kids using alcohol. You got to realize that adults that are over the age of 21 are allowed to drink alcohol. And if they're making, reasonable, wise choices, they can use it in a way that's somewhat appropriate and not too harmful to the body. And then there's some people, whether it be teenagers or adults or older adults or whoever, that are using alcohol in kind of a bad way, thinking of abusing the alcohol, like drinking way too much and for bad reasons. So as we kind of discuss this today, I'm hoping you realize that there's lots of different kind of things to consider related to alcohol. So alcohol, what kids need to know about it? Well, first of all, if you look at the pictures on my next slide, you're not seeing alcohol in here. You're seeing grapes and grains like barley or wheat, and in this case, potatoes. And if you really recognize these as foods, you might think that, hey, these are actually healthy things for us. Potatoes, yeah, maybe. In certain ways they can be good, but eating potato chips and French fries all the time, maybe not that great. Grain group foods like our breads that we have, pasta, even rice, corn, the dried corn, those all are kind of grains that we have that can have beneficial things for our body, including carbohydrates that are good for us. And fruits may not just be grapes that can be used, but it can be used other ways. But all of these things have sugars and starches in them that can be converted or changed into alcohol through a process called fermentation. And fermentation is it's just a process that can occur naturally, but humans have figured out how to use it in a way that creates the alcohol that you might recognize in the next slide. So fermenting turns food into alcohol. This case might be beer, might be wine. There's other forms of alcohol. Like there's many different things lately with like the hard seltzers or, just different drinks there's lots and lots of things, and many of them look like they might be interesting to you, but really in the end, they have alcohol in it. It's not that great for you. So as we kind of move along here, thinking about how alcohol is something that you need to make a good decision about, consider what alcohol is. Alcohol is a drug, and it's a type of drug that we call a depressant. In this case, it does not necessarily mean that it makes people sad, but basically depressants mean that it slows the brain signals and lowers blood pressure, breathing, and in large amounts, alcohol can make the person unconscious or cause death from drinking too much alcohol at one time. And this is why it gets a little scary for me as a health educator, teacher, parent, that I want people to making the best choices about alcohol they can. And really when it comes down to it, that, I worry a little bit about, or a little bit, I worry about kids, especially teenagers on into the young adult life, who have not used alcohol much before and then suddenly are drinking way more than they should, that there can be some dangerous things that happen because of it. So please consider that just because you see adults drinking and making jokes about things, about how alcohol affects them, that it's maybe not necessarily the best thing for everybody. How does alcohol affect the body? Well, think about the different body parts we talked about a few weeks ago on our body systems unit. So in here we have the brain, the lungs, the heart, the liver, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, kidneys, and so on. But really, alcohol can get, once it gets into the body, when people drink it, it goes into the stomach, it can go anywhere in the body that the blood is going to go to. So particularly body parts that are hurt the most are brain. Alcohol slows signals from the brain and making it harder to sense things and make good decisions. And then the heart and lungs, well, we think of the heart and lungs when we talked about tobacco and how harmful it is for the lungs and how it's hard on the heart. In this case, it's a little different on how alcohol affects the heart and lungs than it was for the tobacco, but it slows the heart rate and breathing, and in long-term use for alcohol can cause heart problems, heart disease, possibilities for stroke, those kind of things that aren't so great as people get older. Another important part of the body that we don't usually think much about, because it's really something you don't hear or see or feel working, but it is super important. It's your liver. Your liver is a processor. It takes things that are kind of harmful for the body and breaks it down and helps the body to get rid of things that are poisonous. In this case, alcohol is a poison. So people drinking more alcohol, it's hurting the liver cells that help keep us healthy. For the stomach, it can irritate the stomach lining, causing upset stomachs. And alcohol can affect all parts of the body. Some may not be noticeable than others, but the important parts that we really want to keep healthy sometimes are being affected by alcohol. Alcohol's effect on the brain has to do with how much people drink. So if you think about adults who drink, if they just have one drink or so on an evening, or whatever they have it, it affects a little bit of the brain. And the more people drink, the more and more it affects people's brains and the brain's ability to send messages and think clearly. So it can be something that's really not very healthy for the body and the brain if people are drinking way more than they should. What is a reason that kids shouldn't drink alcohol? Well, usually for kids, your body is smaller, and so the alcohol can affect you more because your body size is small. You have less what's called tolerance for it, meaning that your brain is affected a lot sooner with the alcohol. And the liver isn't completely grown yet and can't deal with the alcohol as fast as an adult would. So we want to keep those growing bodies healthy, and alcohol does not help with that. So thinking of here at the end, there are times when kids might be allowed to drink alcohol. And I've got a few pictures here on the screen, but some of you, depending on your religion, Christian religions seem to use wine as a part of their religious things that they do. And so for my kids, when they were second graders and the church they go to, they had First Communion, and having that sip of wine was a part of the rituals they have for church. And, it was allowed because it's the adults making sure that they're not drinking too much. It's just a sip. There's some symbolism involved, and that is allowed. Parents are allowed to give their child a small amount of alcohol, without like getting in trouble kind of thing. But again, the parents are the ones making sure that the child isn't drinking more than they should. And for me, an example I had when I was a kid, I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. And I remember asking my dad if I could have a sip of his beer. And I thought he would say no. I don't even know why I asked, but he did say I could have a sip. But then he said afterwards, he goes, "You're probably not going to like it." And he was right. I didn't like it at that time. So, and then finally, example that I have, I use alcohol occasionally for cooking. And what happens when you cook with alcohol is that the heat, once it gets to a certain temperature, the alcohol evaporates and it's gone. So only the flavor is left. So if you're a fancy cook like me and make bratwursts on the grill, and you might cook the brats ahead of time in beer and onions, that cooking process gets rid of the alcohol. And then finally, think about how adults can drink responsibly. If you have adults in your life that do choose to drink alcohol, some adults choose not to because they just don't want to have something that's going to be harmful to their body. It might be going against their religion. It might be just a choice they want to make not to do it. But generally, if people are having a small amount of alcohol with a meal, maybe for a celebration, I know when I've been to a wedding, there's been like a toast to the couple, and there's might be champagne there. And again, in cooking, that they can use it. And also up here, if you look at the picture up here, when people as adults choose to drink, they are being responsible by not driving after they've been drinking. So, if they're making those good choices about alcohol, they can, would be responsible and allowed. So right now, as a kid your age, I don't really see a whole lot of times when it would be okay. And again, remember that alcohol is something that does affect the body, and the smaller your body is, the more it can affect you. So just seeing what your parents drink, the equivalent amount to you might be affecting you a lot more. So keep it smart. And what I really want you to do today is get from my message and from the Brain Pop video that's here is just thinking about what those good choices are as a kid your age, and then moving on to middle school and high school to help you with avoiding alcohol being a problem in your life. So, and in the end today, you have one kind of response sheet for me again with a couple questions about how alcohol affects the body. So please respond to those when you're done. Hope you have a wonderful week. If you have questions related to our topics, please use the help button or share with me via email. I'm always happy to help with questions you may have. We will be doing one more week after this week for our topic about alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. And it won't be about another type of drug, but it will be about an important part that you may have already experienced in your life and will experience again. And that's about peer pressure. And peer pressure is a powerful influencer on your lives and your choices. And I'm hoping that in the end, you have good, positive peer pressure from your friends to make good choices about these things. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again soon.